Looking back at the history of crime around the world, most serial killers have had a childhood filled with violence and conflict. Warren, known as the Babyface Killer, was born on October 15, 1967, in Candler, North Carolina. Over the course of 3 years, this man committed a series of horrific crimes, using his good looks and charm to get close to his victims. Warren's childhood was turbulent. As a child, he tried hard to establish an emotional connection with his family, but his father, Douglas, was an alcoholic. His mother, West, did not care about him. As time passed, this became apparent after Warren's younger brother, Ray, was born. West cherished Ray, almost ignored Warren. Raising 2 children at the same time, this family, which was already not very well off, found itself in financial difficulty. Douglas, who loved to drink, couldn't keep up with the family expenses, and he started abusing his family. Once he set fire to the family trailer while drunk, nearly killing his wife and one of his sons. Even though it was an accident, West chose to divorce her husband after the incident. She moved in with relatives with 2 sons, but crazy Douglas continued to stalk and harass her. In the end, West was granted custody of the 2 children and obtained a restraining order against her ex-husband, prohibiting Douglas from approaching them again. Nevertheless, even though he was far away from his violent father, Warren's psychological problems were not resolved. In addition, his peers at school often bullied this frail, fatherless child. So Warren spent most of his childhood in the office of a psychologist. In 1981, Warren entered high school. At the same time, he began arguing with his mother, accusing West of being too indulgent toward his younger brother, caring too much about him, not caring about Warren. From birth, Warren was abused by his father and did not receive love from his mother as he grew up. The pressure of not being cared for by his family weighed heavily on Warren's mind and spirit. Even in high school, Warren still went to the school psychologist's office for treatment. However, speech therapy had little effect. Warren's mental state rapidly deteriorated. He began to relieve stress by committing minor crimes. In early 1982, Warren began mailing threatening letters to his peers, burglarizing homes, and using cocaine and marijuana. Warren was arrested by the police for sending threatening letters and was sent to the hospital for a psychological evaluation. A psychiatrist diagnosed Warren with antisocial personality disorder and schizoid personality disorder. He described Warren as an unsocialized person with depressive characteristics, meaning someone who has not adequately learned and followed social norms, lacks social skills, and exhibits symptoms of depression such as bad mood and pessimism. After undergoing treatment for some time, Warren returned to school, but he was expelled because he had missed 20 days of school in a month. In October 1982, West found marijuana in Warren's room. She did not want her children to become addicted to drugs, so a heated argument ensued. Warren was eventually kicked out of the house for the night. However, impulsive Warren immediately took a gun and kidnapped their neighbor Betty. He dragged Betty to the basement and tied her up. Not long after, Betty's friend came looking for her. Unable to find her, he searched everywhere until he reached the basement, where he found Warren holding a gun and Betty tied up. Warren never imagined this would happen. Before he could carry out his crime against Betty, he was discovered. In a panic, he shot Betty's friend and fled the scene. Fortunately, the bullet did not hit a vital area, and Betty's friend stumbled over to untie her and called the police. On October 4th, Warren was arrested for the shooting incident. During the interrogation, he confessed to the crime. A month later, he attempted to hang himself in his cell, but failed. Later, he was sent to a mental hospital for treatment. After his release, he was charged by the police with kidnapping and attempted murder. Since he was not yet an adult, Warren was transferred to a juvenile assessment center until his release on January 28, 1986. Later, Warren returned to Candler and lived with his mother. Due to loopholes in the background checks conducted during the draft, at that time, the Department of Defense relaxed its moral exemption requirements for applicants with criminal backgrounds in order to meet recruitment needs. As a result, Warren joined the military in April 1986 and was stationed at Fort Benning in Georgia. There, he married a girl named Tracy, who bore Warren 2 sons, but he was not a faithful husband. At the end of 1986, Warren was transferred to Fort Drum for deployment. In mid-May 1987, his colleague Michael was sent to participate in field exercises. However, his wife, 20-year-old Patsy, had an affair with Warren. On May 15th, when Patsy and Warren began dating, she was drugged by Warren, who then raped and strangled her. In the end, Warren dumped Patsy's body into the Black River near Saxport. On February 25, 1988, Warren was arrested by military authorities for desertion, sentenced to 75 days in prison, and demoted to private first class. On April 28th, Warren was ordered to report to Fort Benjamin Harrison in Indiana to continue his service, but he secretly traveled to New York City and spent the entire summer there. During this period, he lived in a homeless shelter and spent his days addicted to drugs. On June 17th, Warren was discharged from the Army for dishonorable conduct and branded a deserter. At the end of June, Warren left New York and traveled to Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, where he was arrested for vagrancy. After serving his sentence in prison, he moved with his wife and children to Spartanburg, South Carolina, in the fall of 1988. Due to his drug addiction, Warren frequently argued with his wife, and eventually he abandoned his family and returned to Cambler. There, he found a job as a cashier at a store near his mother's house and participated in a 3-month truck driver training program. On March 10, 1989, Warren completed his training and began working as a driver for a trucking company in Anderson, South Carolina. That summer, Warren briefly reunited with Tracy, who later informed him that she was pregnant with their second child and that she intended to file for divorce in order to obtain child support. On August 26th, Warren encountered 42-year-old Velma, who had been involved in a traffic accident on a road just 5 miles from the rest stop. Warren, who happened to be passing by, lured Velma into his truck under the pretext of offering assistance. He then drove to a nearby forest where he beat and strangled her before disposing of her body in Bowen Lake. Later, Velma's body was discovered by 2 fishermen, and her vehicle was also found in Greenville County. On December 25th, he met with Jamie, a 39-year-old consultant at a youth assessment center. The man attacked her and strangled her to death. The next day, Warren confessed to Ray that he had killed Jamie, and Ray helped Warren bury Jamie's body in a pit in Pisgah National Forest. 2 days later, Jamie's father contacted the police about his daughter's disappearance and informed them that her boyfriend, Warren, was the last person to see her. On May 28th, Warren was detained by the police, but he denied any connection to Jamie's disappearance. Although the police found Jamie's wallet in Warren's car, they only charged Warren with theft and failure to produce proof of vehicle ownership because they did not find Jamie's body. On June 6th, Warren's grandfather paid $1,000 bail, allowing Warren to be released pending trial. During this time, Warren confessed to Tracy that he had killed Jamie and to West that he had killed Patsy. 2 days later, West told the police everything Warren had said. Warren was immediately listed as a suspect in the murder cases. On July 11th, Warren stole a Kawasaki motorcycle and fled to High Point. On July 13th, Warren met his friend Terry at a hotel. Warren had played on an amateur baseball team with her brother and had visited her home, which was how they became friends. On July 15th, Terry invited Warren to join her children, and some of her friends for a picnic. There, Warren met Terry's friend, 21-year-old Catherine, a part-time student at the University of North Carolina. Because the motorcycle Warren stole was very stylish, Catherine asked to take a ride on Warren's motorcycle. He then took her to an abandoned soccer field, an extremely secluded place where almost no one would be. There, he raped and strangled Catherine, then hid her body in the trunk of her car, which was parked in the parking lot. As early as July 7th, police held a press conference and publicly announced that Warren was a major suspect in 3 murder cases. A few days later, Ray contacted the police and admitted that he had helped Warren dispose of Jamie's body and informed the police of the specific location where they had buried it. Meanwhile, on July 21st, Warren was arrested by the police. During the arrest, he gave up resistance and allowed police to handcuff his hands. After his arrest, Warren confessed to 3 murders, agreed to cooperate, and told the police that he had killed Catherine. In addition, Warren stated that, in addition to these 4 murders, he had committed 4 other murders. When asked about Jamie's murder, Warren insisted that he had no intention of killing her or harming her, and that Jamie died of a drug overdose. At the end of 1990, officials from North Carolina, South Carolina, and New York held a meeting. Because 4 murders had occurred in different states, they needed to carefully formulate a strategy to prosecute Warren. After careful consideration, the officials decided to prioritize extraditing Warren to South Carolina, where he would first face charges for the Velma murder, and then extradite him to North Carolina to address the remaining murder charges. On August 23, 1991, Warren was extradited to South Carolina to stand trial. First, at the request of his lawyers, Warren underwent a psychiatric evaluation. In April 1992, the evaluation results showed that Warren was of sound mind and capable of standing trial. On April 13, 1993, the trial officially began. The trial lasted only 2 days because Warren chose to plead guilty. He was sentenced to life imprisonment for the murder of Velma, and then Warren was extradited to North Carolina to stand trial for Jamie's murder. Due to the conclusive evidence of guilt and the testimony provided by Ray, Warren was found guilty and sentenced to death. After the trial, New York prosecutors stated that although Warren remained the prime suspect in the Patsy murder case, he had already been sentenced to death in North Carolina, so they would not prosecute Warren for the Patsy murder case. In early 1996, Warren was tried for the murder of Catherine. The jury recommended the death penalty, and after 75 minutes of deliberation, Warren was again sentenced to death. During the sentencing, he remained extremely calm and showed no emotional reaction. After this trial, Warren was transferred to death row at the North Carolina Central Prison in Raleigh. Later, he worked with lawyers and filed an appeal in hopes of overturning the death sentence, but it was rejected. In 2009, Warren and 147 other prisoners appealed under the newly implemented Racial Justice Act, arguing that the court's verdict was unfair. The judge and jury had decided on the severity of the punishment based on the victim's skin color. Because Warren's victim was white, he was sentenced to death. This appeal was ultimately rejected because the appeals court found that Warren had received a fair trial. There was no racial bias that could have affected the sentencing. However, due to the high profile of the case, Warren remains on death row awaiting execution as of 2025.